able to claim the win 2-0 as Switzerland defeat Vietnam in this match, or in this game.
Yes, they do. So congratulations to Damo. Commiserations to Kwang. I think he had a really strong team idea for sure, because I think, especially in that game one, the Xerneas and Didi, I think, like, especially if you're Kwang and you watch that back and you see Tapu Fini has like nothing for Xerneas, like you just go, you must, his face must be in his hands. Like, if I'd just gone for the Geomancy, it would have been in a really nice position. To be fair for Damo, like, even so, like, Zacian's still switching in on like the Ndidi and the Xerneas is still looking pretty tight. But it's still a very well played set. Damo played exactly to his win condition, getting exactly what he needed, substituting at exactly the right time as well. So I think it was a well deserved set. And but commiserations to Vietnam. That does put Switzerland 2-0 up versus them in this week.
So I'm done today, so I hope you guys enjoyed my casting, but there's still one more match to go, and you may have seen my face light up. That's because on the little preview screen that you guys can't see yet, I just saw the teams that are going to be coming out. You don't want to go anywhere for this one. Hong Kong against South Korea, and it's going to be wild. I am so excited to watch that match.
Oh, it's going to be good, Stefan. You should definitely stick around. If you're going to, I don't know if you're going to bet on a thing, but while you're brushing your teeth, definitely have a look at this dog trio if it's going to come, because I am very excited for this too. It's Hong Kong versus South Korea, Patrick Cheng versus Seunghoon Cha, and we're going to be right back after this short break. Welcome back, everybody, once again to the Victory World Cup of Pokemon VGC, sponsored by Elgato. And this time, I've traded Stefan in for Ben Kiriakou. How you doing, man?
Yeah, really good. Really looking forward. We've got through some great games already this tonight, or this afternoon, or this morning, depending on where you are tuning in from in the world. And yeah, we're down to the final result. We've got Hong Kong and South Korea battling it out. You've already seen the preview. There's something really exciting that we're going to be seeing. I'm really looking forward to it coming to the game and being one of those, hopefully, one of those games where you see the cool Pokemon and the cool Pokemon comes to the match and you see what the cool Pokemon does. But we'll see if we could get there in just a moment. But before that, we've already seen a pretty exciting and dominating game, and really the example of what happens when you're playing against Zacian and only one side lets the dogs out and the other side keeps them at home, and it doesn't really work out to such a good time for the player that left them at home.
No, it doesn't, Ben. That was quite an analogy, but I did love it. So, yeah, we've got Patrick Cheng of Hong Kong versus Seunghoon Cha of South Korea. And we're going to have a quick look at their group stage here. As we can see, there hasn't been too many games going on so far this week. It is Friday after all. People are just kind of relaxing into the weekend, building what they want to be building at the moment, finalizing all those and then put them into place. So this will be the first game between these two countries. And looking more closely at the players, Patrick Cheng is 1-1 for his team for Hong Kong, and Seunghoon is 2-2 for South Korea. But we're going to look at Patrick first, and here's his spicy team, Ben.
Yeah, it's one of those builds that we've seen raising in popularity, certainly since the Champions Cup team tournament recently held, and that's Groudon and paired with Cherrim. Supporting cast tend to be a little bit varied, but you do tend to see that Dragapult, you tend to see the Entei in the last two slots are a little bit up for grabs. Patrick's opted for Whimsicott, another grass type, a little bit of speed control, and again, another little bit of speed control in that stack attacker, and maybe wanting to cover some different matchups like Xerneas or otherwise in that team. But these tend to be really quite aggressive and leveraging Cherrim as much as they possibly can, because when you're in Sun and when your opponent doesn't have that rain on the field, Cherrim is just so strong. Makes your teammate so strong, especially when it boosts up something like an Entei that we see here or a Dragapult, neither of which can have any of their stats dropped by Intimidate, which means that they can't be slowed down very easily, certainly not with the tools that most teams have available to them. And that makes them so scary, especially when they get that slight bit more bulky on their special side as well at the same time. Really difficult to go up against. And if you don't have a good matchup against this, straight off the bat, you just know you're going to be taking lots and lots of damage, and it's going to be one of those really explosive sets. So we'll see if Seunghoon has an answer there available for this Sun-based team.
And here he is with his even spicier team. Yveltal, Dog Trio Cantonian form, Entei, Amoonguss, Stack Attacker, and the Urshifu Rapid Strike. So looking at this, I mean, he's bringing the Stack Attacker with the South Korea emblem at the moment, which is very cool. But yeah, the Dog Trio really draws my eye in here, Ben.
Yeah, it does. And not quite sure. I don't think, thinking back, I don't think I've seen a Doug Trio really played in competitive play. Maybe you see it on the odd team when you're practicing, but not too often. One of the things that does stand out is whether it's that arena trap, and that could be quite important, actually, being able to lock the Entei in. Excuse me, if you're Seunghoon, and maybe be able to knock it out with an earthquake or something like that, or maybe just take advantage of that trapping effect for the Urshifu, which can attack through protects. But it's gonna be an interesting one, because you've got this kind of really aggressive offensive team that makes itself even more powerful, and that's going up against Yveltal, which is the kind of Pokemon that you see typically that plays a little bit slower, a bit more defensive, a little bit more bulky takes attacks, dishes out great damage with foul play and other such effects, and recovers a little bit of health as well. So it could be either way. You know, if there's a team that you wanted to play against the Groudon with, it definitely would be that Yveltal.
I think it would, yes. So we're going to see how these players play it out in game one of this set. Thinking about leads, we're going to... I'd imagine maybe a Dugtrio lead would be quite nice because you lock in something immediately, which means that you can switch your ally out into something you know they're going to stay in for. So, and it looks like both these players have a couple of modes of speed control. The Yveltal may have Tailwind, or we may just see the Assault Vest set that we've been running around. But on the ground on player from Patrick, we've got Tailwind from the Whimsicott, and we got Trick Room from the Snack Attack as well. So speed control is going to go either way here, and I think that's going to be quite a key component into how these players play around, especially versus each other's Entei's. But let's get into this game one.
Yeah, one of the things I was just thinking about when we're going into this match is actually the Arena Trap does affect the Dragapult, where something like Shadow Tag wouldn't. And so you've got this like weird case where normally you bring Dragapult against Pokemon that trap you, but you can't anymore because it's Arena Trap and it's not Shadow Tag. So here we see the Dugtrio, the cool Pokemon, is coming to the match. Entei on both sides, and of course that Groudon finishing off the roundup for the lead in game one.
Yeah, so we do see the Dugtrio lead here, actually. And I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure Dugtrio actually gets high horsepower. Riddle me that. So it's looking quite good into Entei. However, if Patrick's Cheng's Entei is Choice Scarf, like a lot of them are, and it just goes for a Sacred Fire, and even if it's Dugtrio Sash, there's a 50% chance it just goes down this turn. So I'm wondering if there's maybe a few more support options on it that we don't know about yet. However, Seunghoon has led his Dugtrio with that Entei, which does nicely cover Groudon. And if it is that Stone Edge as well, if maybe he switches in if there's a Cherrim switch in on Patrick's end, he could do a lot of damage back. But yeah, there's a probable Choice Scarf on Patrick's end, knocking it down to the Focus Sash, and there is...
Oh no, the Dugtrio going to be going down turn one. We see a return Sacred Fire going into that Groudon. Does not pick up the burn though. Absolutely right, David. It is that high horsepower going into the Entei. Wouldn't have picked up the KO even without the burn. So good information there for Patrick on how that Dugtrio is trained. And unfortunately, it doesn't even need the burn to be knocked out. The Dugtrio is going to be going down to that Precipice Blades as well as the Entei. So Seunghoon having a real difficulty in this early game. Being surprised, maybe taken off guard by the Choice Scarf on that Entei, and just equally losing it so early on is going to be quite difficult for Seunghoon to bring this back now.
Absolutely, and unfortunately the burns go completely into Patrick Cheng's favour there as well. He gets the burn he wants and doesn't get the burn his own Groudon. So he is able to get off that Precipice Blade with full power and take out that Entei, whereas if there was that 50% chance that went to Seunghoon's way, we would have been looking at a very different game, actually. So funny how two Sacred Fires have really completely flipped the game, and how they could have gone very different without that. But let's see if Seunghoon can bring this back with his Pokemon that have a fairly decent matchup here.
Yeah, indeed. So we see Aqua Jet followed by Sucker Punch coming out from Seunghoon is enough to pick up the Entei, and that's a really big knockout to be able to get. Groudon goes for the Heat Crash, presumably into Yveltal. There it is, taking it to just over half of its health. And actually, that's a really nice position for Seunghoon to be in coming into this turn, because you think, well, he's having some trouble now picking up any knockouts, but combination of super effective and neutral priority attacks are enough to pick up that Entei, and Heat Crash doesn't quite do half damage to the Yveltal, so I could have an opportunity here to come back in this game.
Yeah, there has to be maybe a helping hand on this Whimsicott to be able to pick up this Yveltal. And interestingly, even if you've got Tailwind here, Seunghoon still has two priority attacks that he can use despite that. And this Groudon may still be in range of that Sucker Aqua Jet, but it's not gone for here.
No, not at all. Heat Crash again coming out into that Yveltal, just securing all of that damage. And we see Close Combat go straight into the Groudon, picks up a critical hit, could have made a difference in this match. But we've seen it switch moves, so not a choice band or or the like. We haven't seen any activation of an item. So, yeah, that critical hit probably was important there. Great for Seunghoon to be able to get a little bit of traction in the match, and Oblivion Wing coming out, and you can see why that move is so good. It just restores so much health, and actually, after turn 1 you think, well, how does Patrick lose this game? And this is kind of how. I mean, Seunghoon looks like he's now, with the Cherrim coming out into the field, in a really strong position. So David, what do you think that Patrick can do to eke out this match?
Well, obviously, Cherub's got a fairly decent match into the Urshifu, and he does have the Tailwind now up his sleeve, but still with the 2 priority attacks on Seunghoon's end, and that health that the Veltal's just recovered as well, it's now no longer in range of anything on the Cherub, so this Whimsicott has to target it. And as we've just got the peak of here, there's no Moonblast on this Whimsicott either, so I think Veltal's just put itself out of range of any attack on Patrick's end, so it's looking really strong here, and it can just go for more Oblivion Wings and get even more health back.
Certainly can, and Sucker Punch goes into the Whimsicott, so no attacks coming out there. Obviously boosted by that Dark Aura is enough to pick up the KO on Whimsicott, and Surging Strikes goes through that Protect into the Cherrim, unlikely to do too much damage with the Sun modifier, and obviously Cherrim being a Grass-type Pokemon, so yeah, you can see it there doing maybe a quarter health. I mean, that's pretty respectable when you look at that, and now it's going to be Seunghoon with his 2 Pokemon that are really quite good against Cherrim between Close Combat and Oblivion Wing versus Cherrim that has no way to hit the Yveltal super effective.
Doesn't. So Cherrim does go for the massive Solar Blade, so probably one of the strongest attacks it could possibly go for. It's likely going to take the KO on this Urshifu here, unless it is that Focus Sash, but yeah, we don't see it now. But yeah, it definitely goes now, but it's kicking around very nicely. Goes for its signature Oblivion Wing, healing back a lot of damage and doing a lot back to Cherrim. So yeah, from a 4-2 lead in this game 1 on Patrick, he does actually end up losing the sets to Seunghoon's very nice Urshifu Yveltal right at the end there.
Yeah, that's really impressive actually from Seunghoon, and maybe just a testament to the move choices that he's made, as well as how he's trained his Pokemon. That Yveltal just able to hang on from those 2 heat crashes, and maybe the critical hit made a difference. Maybe if Patrick went for the Grass Knot as well as the heat crash into that Yveltal, it would have been enough to pick up the knockout. But then, if that Yveltal is trained to be faster than the Groudon, it would have recovered all the health from the Whimsicott. Probably wouldn't have gone down either, and then you don't get the Tailwind up, or at least until the next turn. So it turns out that Yveltal, especially without Moonblast on the field, is really tough for for Patrick's team to be able to deal with. So with that in mind, David, what are your thoughts on how Patrick can adjust to make sure that he gets the most out of his turns, even with a good start?
Yeah, it's got to be in that stack attacker, I think. You've got to be able to deal with the Urshifu, obviously, and be able to check that reliably. So needing something like the Whimsicott or with the Cherrim to be able to deal with that and get the stack attacker into the position that you want is going to be really key. Because especially if you get the Trick Room up, and Groudon is probably going to be slower than that Urshifu, it's going to be able to underspeed and obviously do a lot of damage. And then as long as you have something to pair with the stack attacker can deal with the Urshifu, especially if you've got that body press, because otherwise there's not really anything that Patrick has for the Yveltal. He does no Moonblast on the Whimsicott. He does have the Rock Slide on Groudon that we did see, but there's no electric type, there's no ice type, and especially with it healing, you need to be doing damage to it quickly.
Yeah, you definitely do. But without further ado, I think we're going to be going into this match and seeing how these players have adjusted. Of course, we're seeing from Patrick's perspective, so we'll have to see if there's any change up in the lead from these 2 players. So here it is on your screen, coming right now, game number 2.
Yeah, so now let's have a look at these leads that are coming out now. We've got the Dug Trio again, and then Entei, so sticking with what Seunghoon knows here, as even though they went both down turn 1, it still worked out for him, and the same lead for Patrick as well. So maybe Seunghoon wants to roll those dice again. It didn't go in his favour last time, And maybe if there's a bit of a burn trade this time for that 50-50 chance, then that's probably looking quite even more favourable for him. Whereas even when he didn't get what he wanted, he still kind of ekes it out with a win. Maybe we'll see a little bit more from this Doug Trio as well. Especially as now he knows that this Entei on Patrick's end is going to live that hit. He may be able to opt for something else. Doug Trio doesn't get anything like a Will-O-Wisp, like a lot of support Pokemon do get, but I'm trying to think of other moves it does get, like Memento, for instance, enables you to get a big drop of stats on something, get something in for free so you can really make the most of it. That could be an option. I know it used to get beat up for a lot of weakness policy Pokemon, but here we're just going to see it protect.
Yeah, one of the moves that most Pokemon have access to. Love to see something like a Bulldoze coming out from Entei on Seunghoon's side of the field. That'd be pretty cool, but we just see a Sacred Fire coming out. Sacred Fire obviously landing from Patrick's Entei into the Protect on Doug Trio, but the Burn comes out onto the Groudon this time, munches onto its Citrus Berry, so this Precipice Blades coming out here isn't going to be enough to pick up the KO on Entei, you'd like to think, on Seunghoon's side. Yeah, you can see they're doing just about 60%, and Groudon looking a lot more under pressure. One of the moves that could be coming out here from Seunghoon's Doug Trio is that Sucker Punch as well.
Yes, it's a nice option there, especially you got something really nice and low, really down, and you can just completely pick it off. And that combination with the high horsepower on it for this other Entei is going to be pretty crucial too. But if it is that Arena Trap, these two Pokemon on Patrick's end are definitely staying in, and Seunghoon can play to that advantage.
Indeed he can. A Sacred Fire going into the Doug Trio again does pick up the Burn as Focus Sash is activated to keep that on 1 health. Sacred Fire going into the Groudon yet again isn't quite enough to pick up the KO, so we are going to see another Precipice Blades here, but I mean, we've been in this position before, and it was definitely better last game for Patrick as 2 KOs come out, the Entei and the Doug Trio go down, and now that Entei holding a Choice Scarf is going to be in range of 2 priority attacks from that Yveltal and the Urshifu if Seunghoon decides to go for it. So maybe a little bit of a switch up here, but equally pressured on Patrick's side. So we'll see if the supporting cast for Patrick is any different in this match, and whether or not he's got a few more tools in his arsenal to deal with that Yveltal.
So we saw last time Patrick was doubled up into his Entei by Seunghoon with the double priority move. So I wonder if we see maybe a bit of a switch up here, because if Entei does end up switching out, Seunghoon goes for that play, there's a lot of damage output because Sucker Punch will just fail. And Groudon isn't looking too threatening here either with that Burn too, so it's not going to do too much, but it might put it in range of something. But if there's one thing you do want to be able to do is go for a Sacred Fire and maybe get that Burn into the Urshifu, because that frees up a potential stack attacker in the back. But we do see the little cheeky reveal that there is none there at the moment, but let's see if it is actually enough to be able to take this, especially versus this very oppressive Yveltal.
Indeed, Entei not sticking around to see if 2 priority moves will come out again, and Whimsicott goes into its place, and we do see the twin priority moves coming out, but Sucker Punch fails because it's going into a slot that wasn't attacking that turn, and the Aqua Jet does minimal damage in the sun. Groudon content to just launch out a Rock Slide, not doing too much damage, but you know, every little helps when you're trying to knock out these Pokemon, and kind of pinned in a position now where the Entei can come in, but we know it gets knocked out from these 2 attacks, and question mark is what Seunghoon has to do about that.
It does, yeah. He's in a really strong position now. His Yveltal's still on more health than it was last time. Urshifu's chipped down a little bit here, and Urshifu is still pretty heavy, so it can be hit quite hard from this Grass Knot, but I don't know if it will be enough for a knockout. But Entei gets immediately switched out into the chair and potentially going to be baiting a Sucker Punch here and that Aqua Jet combination again to stall out a little bit more, but let's see.
Indeed, as we see the Aqua Jet coming out into that Cherrim slot, so just wanting to do as much damage as possible to that Entei. With the Sucker Punch, we see it coming out again, and there's the Grass Knot that you mentioned there coming out from Patrick's side of the field into that Urshifu, but kind of looks close as to whether it's going to be a 2-hit KO or not.
Yeah, it does. I think if he can get that roll again, I think it's definitely going to KO. And it was a really nice play from Patrick too. but I'm still struggling to see actually how there's going to be enough damage into this Yveltal. I think even without Oblivion Wing, it still looks a little bit tricky because you've got no Moonblast, you've got Entei in the back, I suppose, but Sun is running out soon. So if you can get that burn, I suppose, you've got Sucker Punch's damage is significantly reduced, but it's going to depend on the bulk of this Yveltal at the moment, I think. But on equally Seunghoon's end, we know he's not Choice Scarf, so he can protect from this Grass Knot potentially and kind of get a little bit around that, especially if this Whimsicott can then go down to the Yveltal. It's still anybody's game, though.
It is, and speaking of protects, we see two of them there, one coming out from the Cherrim, one coming out from the Urshifu. Grass Knot landing into the protect on the Urshifu on Seunghoon's side, and he's going for an Oblivion Wing. Is going to be into that Whimsicott, but the boosted special defense from that Cherrim is paying some dividends at the very least, allowing that Whimsicott to survive with a little bit of health remaining. But that Sun is gone from the field and Groudon is no more. So unless this Whimsicott has a way to set Sun, which I don't believe that we've seen already with our little sneak peek, there's no way to activate that Cherrim again.
There isn't, but Patrick's still in a good position to go for this Grass Knot now into the Urshifu. But it still does need to live the Aqua Jet and Sucker Punch. Both attacks it does resist, but I think it's actually going to be really close whether it actually goes down or not. Because Seunghoon's Urshifu needs to stay alive for him to be able to reliably deal with the Entei in the back. Even then, Yveltal will still have a nice chance, and Cherrim's basically a dead slot at this point, unless it does end up Pollen Puffing into Whimsicott to heal it up. But Whimsicott can't protect and get the Pollen Puff at the same time, so here comes this double up.
Yeah, looks like it. Aqua Jet coming into the Whimsicott and a Sucker Punch to finish it off. Similar to last game, but with the Whimsicott not the Entei. And now we see that Pollen Puff coming out. Not going to have any target because it was targeting that Cherrim. And great move there from Seunghoon. Knows that was the turn it needed. And now with the position that it was in, if that Entei had switched in to avoid the Sucker Punch, then without that Sun, the Entei would have taken loads of Jet and probably put it in range for another Aqua Jet just afterwards. And at that point, there's nothing left to deal with this Yveltal. So it looks pretty confident for Seunghoon, and he's going to be taking this game for South Korea.
Most likely, yes. I think there's no chance of missing Oblivion Wing either. So there's not a lot of way out for Patrick to go for here. And he may even be in range of an Aqua Jet this very turn. And here it comes right out. Yeah,
surviving on 9 health, but 9 health is definitely not going to be enough to survive the Sucker Punch from the Yveltal. And I want to give a shout out here actually to the Doug Trio as Pollen Puff fails into the Entei, because that Doug Trio did just enough damage to the Entei to allow that double up to pick up the knockout. I think if the Entei was at full health, it may have been a bit questionable depending on how the Yveltal was trained, but just because of that high horsepower damage, it's just in the perfect spot. We see close combat though, knocking out the Cherrim, and that is game 2 to Seunghoon.
That is game 2. Seunghoon Cha of South Korea takes the 2-0 victory over Hong Kong's Patrick Cheng. Puts him up at 3-2 for his team. Patrick Cheng being at 1-2 now. And this is a big match as well this week for these two teams because they're both 1-1 in their group stage. So this is the third week. And if either team gets the win, that puts them through. So it's a pretty big week. And now Seunghoon putting South Korea up to that extra win is pretty big for him. And it's a very well played set again, especially if Patrick was being prepared for here. Versus his team, Yveltal was such a nice bring because as we saw, it just was able to heal up so nicely. The Dragapult that's often paired with Groudons, you can't really bring versus it either. Dragon Dance does a lot of damage, but if you're that Choice Band set, you're just going to go straight down to a Sucker Punch. There was no electric type to threaten it either, and Urshifu was the perfect counter to that Stack Attacker, just completely scaring off it being brought to the games at all.
Yeah, it's just so difficult, especially... I know I keep talking about it, but I do just want to keep talking about the Doug Trio, and not just because it's a cool Pokemon that came to the game and actually did a little bit of work, but also because the the effect of having something like Arena Trap really changed the way that these teams operate, right? And especially with Ground and Cherrim compositions, you tend to find that the Cherrim wants to switch in, but the Arena Trap, at least early game, stops the Cherrim switching in. And of course, if you lead the Cherrim and Groudon, yeah, the Groudon's doing loads of work and it's really aggressive and offensive, but you don't have that Entei on the field to put pressure on. You have switch-in potentials, of course, to Groudon, like that Yveltal. And so you get into these really difficult positions of like, well, how do I lead then in order to be able to bring my strategy to the match, but also not lose really quickly if the Dugtrio traps in something that doesn't have a favorable matchup, or they bring in something that has a favorable matchup against me turn one.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's a really nice theory because it's something like that you don't really put. Dugtrio is not something that you put on a team because like, oh, I need a good ground type. Let's put on Dugtrio.
Yeah.
You kind of want to base it more around how you want to play the match because of its ability to be able to trap those Pokemon in. You think like, right, if I lead Dugtrio here, what am I trapping in, and how can I make the most of that with my ally that I'm using? So, and having, say, a choice Pokemon on the field limits the choices your opponent has to switch in on it. And so you can effectively get that lock, even if you're not using something like a Perish Trap team or something. So really interesting to see that. And the Dugtrio actually takes the win as well, which is not often the case with these very interesting Pokemon. So thank you very much for everyone to tuning in for our stream on Friday. Be sure to tune in tomorrow for our Saturday stream. Again, another 5 matches and another further hype sets, especially after a lot of people would have been already playing their games this week. So from myself and from Ben, thank you very much for tuning in, and we'll see you again.